Hey all, in this video I'm going to talk about the rights of undocumented workers under federal and California law. First I'm going to go over which rights undocumented workers have, then I'm going to talk about the risks that they face when challenging employers' illegal conduct, and lastly I'm going to talk about what your rights are when updating your social security number with your employer if you gain legal authorization to work. Federal law prohibits employers from employing someone they know is undocumented. Yet almost all of the labor protections under federal and California law apply to undocumented workers. And that's because we don't want to have a population that corporations can subject to horrendous labor practices without any consequences. Undocumented workers are therefore covered by wage and hour protections like the minimum wage, overtime pay, and meal and rest breaks, workers' compensation benefits to cover the cost of medical treatment if you're injured on the job, health and safety protections, including the right to refuse unsafe work, the right to organize and participate in a union, the right to receive California state disability insurance if you've paid into the system and are unable to work because of illness or injury, the right to receive California paid family leave. This is a program for people who need to take time off work to care for a sick relative or for parents to bond with a new child. The right not to be retaliated against for engaging in a protected activity like complaining about unsafe or illegal working conditions. And finally, undocumented workers have the right not to be discriminated against based on a protected category. Now, this is a little tricky, so let me explain. As I said before, federal law prohibits employers from employing someone they know is undocumented. So it's legal for an employer to fire someone because that person is undocumented. At the same time, an employer cannot discriminate against anyone, documented or not, based on a protected category like race, religion, sex, age, disability, and so on. So what often happens is that employers hire workers they know are undocumented and then later use the employee's lack of documentation to cover up an illegal reason for firing the person. For example, this often happens to undocumented women who become pregnant. The employer knows the worker is undocumented when they hire her. It's not a problem. But then the woman gets pregnant, the company decides it doesn't want to deal with her, and they use her lack of documentation as an excuse for firing her. This is illegal. An employer can fire a worker because they are undocumented, but that has to be the real reason. They can't use the employee's lack of documentation as an excuse to cover up a different illegal reason. Now, the main right that undocumented workers do not have in California is the right to collect unemployment insurance. This is because unemployment insurance requires the person to be available to work. And people who are undocumented are technically not available to work because they're not legally authorized to work. Now, the reality is that even though undocumented workers have all of these rights, they still face significant risks when challenging employers' illegal conduct. It is technically illegal for an employer to report an undocumented worker to ICE or another immigration agency in retaliation for that worker standing up for their rights. An employer who retaliates in this way breaks the law again. And in California, the state can suspend or revoke the license of any business that retaliates against an undocumented worker by reporting or threatening to report them or one of their family members. But even though retaliating against a worker by reporting them to ICE is illegal, ICE is still allowed to follow up on the report. And if ICE chooses to follow up, they can try and deport the person. If that person used false information or documents when they applied for their job, they can also be fined, charged with a crime, and prevented from returning to live and work in the United States. ICE has discretion over whether or not it will try and deport someone who has filed a complaint in defense of their rights. So how ICE approaches these situations depends a lot on which presidential administration is in power. God willing, under President Biden, we will see a more compassionate approach to undocumented workers, especially those who have suffered some kind of labor violation. But at this point, there are no guarantees. Because of these risks, if you are undocumented and you're considering filing a complaint against your employer for a labor violation, I strongly encourage you to speak with an attorney who knows employment and immigration law so they can help you understand the legal protections and the risks that apply in your situation. Finally, I want to talk about the rights you have if you were undocumented, but now have work authorization and want to update your social security number with your employer. Federal law does not require an employer to fire someone who previously lacked work authorization, but is now authorized to work. So if your employer learns that you were previously undocumented, but you now have work authorization, they can keep you as an employee and just update your information. Some employers might have an honesty policy and punish you for lying if you provided false information in the past. This can be illegal if the company does not equally punish other similar types of employee dishonesty. That's federal law, but if you're in California, our state goes much further in protecting employees. In California, it is flat out illegal for an employer to fire or discriminate against someone for updating their information, including their social security number. If you now have a valid social security number, you can also update your record with the SSA, the Social Security Administration, so that you'll receive credit for the taxes you paid in the past while using a different social security number. I'll include a link in the description to instructions for how to do this. Now, using someone else's social security number is illegal, so there's always a risk whenever you reveal this information. But the SSA normally does not try to prosecute people it knows reported income in the past using someone else's number. Okay, well, there's a lot more I could say, but I hope this gives you a helpful overview. Good luck to you.